Okay, perfect. So maybe I'll just start again for the purposes of the recording. So hi everyone, my name is Faizal Haji. I'm the graduate program advisor for the Master's and Graduate Certificate Program in Global Surgical Care at UBC. It's a program that we offer through our branch for Global Surgical Care in the Department of Surgery. And also on the call is Cecilia Gruber, who's our education manager. And Cecilia is the wizard of all things of our graduate programs and much more knowledgeable than I am. So I'll try to muddle my way through your questions, and then Cecilia will bail me out whenever I say something wrong. So thanks everyone for coming. And probably the main reason you're here is because you know that the next round of intake for our admissions processes for our master's and graduate certificate are coming up at the beginning of April. It's a bit earlier this year than we've done in the past, but we wanted to give lots of extra time for the admissions committee to review, and for our awards committee to consider applicants, and then also in case there's any hiccups in the application process, particularly for our applicants coming from LMICs, so that way we could make sure that everybody gets all of their documentation in before the official start date of the program in September. So that's the first big piece of information, is that the deadline for application this year is April 1st. Maybe what I'll do is just share my screen, where you can get all of the main information about our programs. And can everybody see this okay?
Yep, I can.
Perfect. So this is our main webpage for the branch. And we can put the link into I'll put the link into the chat in case you guys haven't seen it. I'm sure many of you have already, but just in case you haven't, meeting group chat, there we go. That's where you can access all of the information about our programs. And so, as I mentioned, there's two main graduate programs that we have. We've got the Masters of Global Surgical Care and the Graduate Certificate in Global Surgical Care. And the Graduate Certificate is sort of a subset of the Masters. So in the Graduate Certificate, you take a total of 4 courses for a total of 12 credits. And those 4 courses are used towards the graduate certificate, which is the designation that you get. And then for the master's, it's a total of 10 courses, one of which is an elective. And after completing those 10 courses, then you get the master's. So it's a course-based master's program. The courses that you take in the graduate certificate include Surg 510, 512, 514, and 516, and they're designed to be an introduction to the field of global surgery. So the first course is Surgical Care in International Health, and that's kind of like your introductory course. And then Surg 512 is a course in global disability. And there's some new instructors that have just come online in the last year or two, and so they're evolving this course in some pretty exciting directions. And then 514 is Surgical Care in Humanitarian and Disaster Response. And then the final course, Surg 516, is Program Planning and Evaluation. And so that's sort of like a first step into how to evaluate and plan programs in LMIC context and in low resource settings. And so those are the 4 courses that make up the graduate certificate. And then the master's program is those same courses. Oops. My cursor's not working. There we go. The master's is those same courses with the addition of Surg 517, which is research methods for surgical procedures with global surgical comparisons, which is your sort of introduction to research in global surgery course. And then 518, which is surgical care in Canada's rural and remote Indigenous communities with global comparisons. And so that's focused on rural, remote, and Indigenous health. And then Surg 542 and 560 are our 2 more practically oriented courses. 542 is directed study in global surgical care, which usually ends up being a focused literature search in how to conduct a lit search and put together a lit review on a particular topic. So that's the directed study, and you'll learn all about how to do that. And then in 560, That's our field practicum, which some students take as an opportunity to conduct a research project that's focused on global surgery, and others do a more practically oriented experience or project with NGOs or other organizations that are working in the global surgery space. And then, as I mentioned, there's an elective, which is 3 credits, which you can take either any course at UBC or at another institution, as long as it's of relevance to your learning and to global surgery in some way. So that's the core content of the curriculum for those 2 programs. There's a number of instructors who are both at UBC and at other institutions around the world, who are part of the program faculty and who instruct in the program. Both course programs are delivered completely online, and we do have some synchronous components to them. So there will be some Zoom sessions and other activities for people to participate in, as well as there's an online learning management system where you'd be required to contribute to course-based discussions and module discussions throughout the courses. And there'll be assignments, as is typical fashion, that you'll have to submit and get graded on for in order to satisfy the course requirements. And then at the end of the program, or at the end of each course, you'll be assigned either a pass or a fail. So that's another change that's happened in the last few years, is that we've gone to a pass-fail system for all of our courses. We don't assign course grades that appear on your transcripts anymore. Maybe I'll stop sharing there. I think you guys have some sense of the admissions processes that we go through, so all of the requirements, but if there's questions around that, I can have Cecilia chip in and provide some additional information. For the graduate certificate, the tuition structure is on a per course basis, and for the master's, it's based on a series of installments that happen, 6 installments over the course of the program, which is the first 2 years. Both programs are designed so that you can take them at your pace. So there is part-time options where you can take, for instance, the master's program and distribute it over the course of about 5 years. And so we encourage those who are either professionals or in other streams of study or other things like that to consider what works best for your learning, and we're happy to accommodate and support those things. Cecilia, is there anything major that I'm missing around structure of the program?
I don't think so. That was a great overview. But I'm happy to answer any or help with answering any questions that people may have.
Do you want to quickly just run through timelines for the admissions process, Cecilia? Just when the admissions comes in, when people can expect to hear from us, and when the course or when the actual programs start, and then expectations around completion and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. So as Dr. Haji mentioned, the deadline is April 1st. So that's the date when everything technically should be in. There's a little bit of leeway to still send in like references, and I believe the referee deadline is actually April 8th, so there's a little bit of time to get the references in after that. But I would, if you haven't started already and you're interested in applying, I'd say start now, because it does take some time to order, especially transcripts from previous institutions, and yeah, to get those reference letters submitted. So after that, then the applications will be reviewed, and if there's anything missing, like I'll follow up with applicants and make sure that everything's complete, and then our admissions committee will review. Generally, it's done like in the past, we've made decisions and communicated them within about a month after the deadline. I think that's generally reasonable. So I would say we would probably notify applicants sometime in May, which, as Dr. Haji mentioned, is there are some requirements by UBC to submit official hard copies. In some cases, they also ask not only for an official transcript, sometimes they ask for a copy of your certificate as well. So I know that sometimes it takes, it can be challenging to get those from institutions and have them mailed to UBC. So that's one of the reasons we have made our deadline a bit earlier than the past. So all of that needs to be submitted before the beginning of September 2024. So yeah, that's the basic kind of admissions timeline.
So Cecilia and I didn't want to spend too much time talking. We wanted to make sure there was lots of time for you guys to be able to ask questions, and we're happy to direct our responses to what you guys want to know about. So maybe I'll open it up now to let you guys ask whatever questions you guys have about anything to do with the process. It can be about the program, it can be about the admissions process, it can be about awards and scholarships, it can be about any and all of it. And you can feel free to either unmute yourself and ask your question, or put it into the chat, or raise your hand and I can call out to you, whatever you prefer.
I have a question. It's Kevin Calder. I'm a pediatric plastic surgeon. I do a lot of international work with Operation Smile primarily. I'm interested in obtaining the master's, but as you mentioned, I'm a busy professional. And so I wanted to get your gauge what you'd recommend as applying directly to the master's program and then pursuing that over a prolonged period of time, like you'd mentioned, over a number of years, or applying first to the graduate certificate and then extending that. Can you just comment if there's a separate admissions process if you do the certificate, then want to translate that into a master's, or they run completely separately?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kevin, and happy to address that. So I think there's both options are available, and different students in the past have decided to go one or either route depending on what their particular circumstances is. So I would say that the answer to your question is it depends on what you think would be most beneficial for you. For some students, they start in the graduate certificate, and then what we call laddering is the process to go into the master's. So they would ladder into the master's after some time if they've decided that they want to carry on and continue with the program. And so we've had a few students do that, mostly because they weren't sure if they wanted to pursue the master's or not, or if it was going to be something that they could sort of complete the process for, and they wanted to see if this was really right for them. So they start with the graduate certificate, take some of the courses, and then at some point along the way, decide that they want to do something more extensive and then go into the master's. There's a number of students who go directly into the master's, and I would say the majority of people in your sort of situation, if they know they want to do the master's, will just go directly into it. And then we've had a few people who unfortunately have gone the other way, where they've started the master's and then recognized partway through that either circumstances change or life comes in the way and they can't complete the master's program, or it's just not the right thing for them anymore, but they've done a considerable amount of the coursework and completed the requirements for the certificate, and they actually go the other way, where they withdraw from the master's but then decide to stay in the or complete the requirements for the certificate program and get that as their designation instead. So we're pretty flexible with whatever works for each student and in each circumstance. And often these things end up being conversations that we have individually. One of the considerations that should be thought about is the funding structure. So if you start in the certificate program and then ladder into the master's, unfortunately, UBC does recognize those as separate programs. And so you can't use the tuition that you use for the certificate towards the master's, even though you've completed the course requirements and you don't need to redo those courses to get into the master's. Unfortunately, you pay the full amount of the master's tuition. So it would be like paying the tuition for two programs, but completing one and a half effectively, because you've already completed 4 courses if you've done the graduate certificate before starting the master's. So from the financial perspective, it kind of makes sense to go directly into the master's, because then you're not paying tuition twice for those courses, at least those 4 courses. But it really depends on people's individual situations. And then in terms of the structure of the programs, like we mentioned, it's quite flexible. And so there isn't a specific requirement that you have to complete a certain number of courses in any given period of time, except that you just need to be enrolled and working towards the completion of the degree. So if you, for instance, wanted to take one course per year until you completed the program, that would be totally fine, as long as you sort of have that 5-year time frame in mind to complete the program. And there is a bit of flexibility even with that in terms of being able to extend depending on circumstances or whatnot. So we've had students who have had to take a professional leave to complete a fellowship, or if it's their last year of residency training or something like that, and they're swamped with other activities. We have a number of professionals who are in the program and who have been in practice while completing the degree. Some who are actually currently in the program, and we're happy to connect you with some people if that would be helpful in order to talk through their approach and what they found and how challenging or not the coursework was while trying to maintain a practice. And it's probably easier to talk to a student who's been through it and who can reflect honestly to you what was feasible or not feasible from their perspective. And we're happy to work with you to figure out how to structure the program so that it works for you. There are some prerequisites for the courses where you have to take certain courses before others. For instance, you can take 542 and 560 until you've completed some of the prior coursework, and 510 tends to be a prerequisite for other courses. But we're a little bit flexible with, for instance, taking courses simultaneously, depending on how you want to structure it. So in the same sort of circumstances, we've had students who have had, a 3 or 4 month period where they could intensively take courses, and it made sense for them to take 3 or 4 courses in a really short period of time, and then to have a longer period of time where they completed, say, 542 and 560, which are the independent study kind of courses. And those ones you can complete over a longer period of time. And so they did those in another year or after a period of a break or something like that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Cecilia, is there anything else that I missed in that response that you'd want to add?
The only thing I could think of, well, you did mention that, so just in regards to the tuition for the masters, that 6 mandatory installments get charged, whether you're registered in a course or not. So the only way to not have to pay the tuition is if you take an official leave of absence. So as Dr. Haji mentioned, some students do that when they have personal or professional obligations and life gets busy or things happen. So I mean, some students just decide to pay the tuition but not enroll in courses. So that's just something to be aware of. But the graduate certificate is a little bit more flexible in that you have up to, as well as the master's, you have up to 5 years to complete it, and you don't have to take a leave of absence if you don't take a course. So you could just take a course and then not take one for a semester and then take another course. So it's a little bit more flexible that way in terms of the timing.
Yeah, and I guess the only other thing to mention is that the tuition structure for the master's is such that you pay the 6 installments, and then if at the end of that period of time, so that would be about 1.5 or 2 years worth of installments that you've paid. After that, if you're still completing the coursework, that's not a problem. And there's no formal tuition installments that are charged, but you do have to pay a $500 yearly continuing fee. So that would be the only additional expense after those 6 installments from years 2 to 5, whenever you've finished, is about a $500 a year continuation fee. Are there any other questions from the group?
Hi, I'm Ala, and I just have a quick question. In regards to the graduate study and the graduate certificate and the master. Um, I'm asking about the certificate itself based on the accreditation. I know master's is a bit way more prestigious, but what are the benefits that I might get from the graduate certificates? What does it what does it equal, other equivalents, accreditation, credit hours, and so?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ala. The certificate was designed for people who don't necessarily want to have a full graduate degree. So it's not a degree program, but it's what's called a credential. And so it's a bit like if you imagine in college where you can take either diplomas or other related programs that basically signal to somebody that you've got some additional or advanced training in a particular area or expertise in a particular area, but not to the level of somebody who has a formal graduate degree in that. That's essentially what the way that it would get sort of viewed in the marketplace or in the workplace, or in future when you're sort of putting that on your CV and stuff. So there's at UBC a couple of different levels. I think there might be one that's not quite to the level of certificate, and then there's certificate, and then there's diploma. And so a certificate is up to 12 courses, and then a diploma is, I think, 15 and more. And then anything beyond that would then be to a level of a degree. So it would be, as I mentioned, a credential. It's not something that is recognized as a formal degree, so you don't get a formal degree parchment, but you do get a certificate that demonstrates that you completed this credential and it's official and you have a transcript from UBC and all that kind of stuff. And so for people who don't necessarily want to go through the process of having a full degree and all of the things that go with that in terms of the requirements for coursework, then this is a reasonable option. I'm hoping that answered your question.
Yes, thank you so much.
And I can see a question in the chat. Are there any scholarship opportunities for LMIC for the master's course? So that's a great question, Sir Fel. Yes, the short answer is that there are. Right now, all of the financial assistance that we are providing is for students who are applying from LMICs. So they're not available to our domestic applicants, but they are available to those students applying from LMICs. And there's two sort of parallel processes, but they're through a sort of common application. And all that's required at this point is for students to indicate that who are from an LMIC, to indicate that they wish to have financial assistance or scholarship to help offset the cost of the program. And then we've got an awards committee that reviews all of the applicants and all of the available funding, and then determines how the funding gets dispersed among the students that have applied. In general and in the past, we've been able to offset the tuition amount close to about half of what the total program tuition is, and Cecilia can correct me on the numbers if I'm wrong. But you can sort of expect something around that being offset. Whether or not that's going to be the same for every year or every applicant is not something I can guarantee, because that depends year to year on what the funding is available and what we're able to secure from our partners. But that's what we try to endeavor for, is to be pretty consistent across applicants and across years if we can. There are some changes coming potentially with our fee structures and stuff in the future. There's an application that's under review with UBC right now. And if that gets approved, then that might have an implication for what the total tuition amount is for international applicants to the masters. But that would also have implications for what scholarships are available. So I don't anticipate that that's going to result in a higher tuition rate for anybody. And if anything, hopefully it's going to be a lower tuition rate. But we don't have confirmation on what the endpoint of that's going to be just yet. And so as of right now, the tuition fee is the same as it's been in previous years, and the awards process is going to be similar to what it's been in previous years, which is that you can apply and it'll be considered by the awards committee, and then we'll notify you about the amount of offset that we're able to support. Is that fair, Cecilia? Anything else that I'm missing?
Yeah, I think that's sounds about correct. Yeah, the total tuition international is about 56,000, and in the past we've supported up to about I think it was 30,000, but that's, yeah, as Dr. Haji mentioned, that number is not current. Like, we can't currently guarantee that number, as it depends on various departmental approvals, but yeah, certainly, like, if you indicate in your application that you're from an LMIC and require financial assistance, yeah, please check. There's a box that is to be checked in the online application, and yeah, we'll definitely review your application and do our best to provide that support if it's available.
And then the only other thing to mention on the point of the scholarships is that we typically will award that on a yearly basis. So the applications get reviewed, the award is given for 1 year, and then it's potentially renewable for the second year. And the getting the second year's worth of award is contingent on satisfactory progress in the program. So we have to see that you're making progress towards completing the degree and all those kinds of things. But all of that would be specified when you get the notification about the award. Okay. Any other questions from anybody on the call? Okay, it sounds pretty good. So if there are questions that come up later on, please feel free to reach out to myself or to Cecilia, and we're happy to try to answer them for you. And otherwise, we look really forward to receiving your applications. Best of luck.